Hey, welcome in Monday Live. Jason Priester, allclemsontigers.com. Before we get started, remind everybody if you have not hit that subscribe button, please do so. We are here every Monday night at 7 p.m. Little different location this week, not the sturdiest of structures I am attempting to do this show on tonight. So I am going to try to keep the wobbling to a minimum. So forgive me for that if it gets a little rough at times. I see us already doing it a little bit, but got some baseball to talk about, basketball to talk about. We can even, spring practice is less than 2 weeks away. We can dive into that. As always, I kind of let you guys drive the conversation. For all you baseball fans, it's hard to be displeased with anything you saw this weekend. There's a lot to like about this baseball team, man. A lot of depth. Eric Backett might have a problem trying to get everybody enough at bats at times this season, man. There's a lot of depth on this team, 1 to 40. You see a guy like Jack Crichton only played one game all weekend. We're talking about a guy that was a Major League Baseball prospect coming out of high school. Backus made sure to bring him down here to Clemson with him from Michigan. And, really the only reason he got on the field yesterday is because Will Taylor had a death in the family. So that just kind of speaks to the depth on this roster. My own personal breakout player of the season, Nolan O'Rocky, had a pretty good weekend. Kicked it off Friday with a grand slam. He's already starting to make me look a little bit smart here. I thought I was going out on a limb with that one, man. But he had a pretty good weekend in the opening series. I wouldn't worry too much about the pitching, man. I know the pitching got hit a little bit, but none of those guys are stretched out yet. Not sure what we saw this weekend is even going to be the starting rotation 2 weeks from now. Although I fully expect Barlow will be in it. Tristan Smith will be in it, but I think eventually Austin Gordon gets moved to the weekends. Not sure if Canuck stays in the rotation or they decide to roll with Matt Marshall. That guy's probably starting more games than anybody on the roster. A lot of experience. He pitched pretty well yesterday after Canuck did, which I thought Canuck. He got hit some, but you in watching him, you see what there is to like about him, man. That changeup that I told you how good that changeup was, man, it is fantastic. It's got a lot of movement on it. His fastball's got a lot of movement on it. Once he gets settled in, he's going to be really good for this baseball team. Not moving forward next year, year after, maybe even really. I mean, that's on top of what he can give you this year. And then the lineup, man, it might even actually have a little bit more pop than I was thinking it was going to have going into the season. And the wind was blowing out Friday and Saturday. It was a good day to hit the ball out of the park. Not so much yesterday. It was blowing in a little bit, probably just enough to have an effect. If the wind's blowing out, that ball played right hit yesterday is probably out of there, no problem. But, and we saw this lineup have some pop without Jimmy Obertop hitting a home run. Alden Mathis it looks like he's going to provide some power in the middle of that lineup. Again, it's going to be, like I've said before, it's going to be hard to replicate what you got from Caden Grice and Billy Amick last year, and I wouldn't expect any one or two guys to be able to do that. But as a collective, I think they can. I expect Will Taylor to have a little bit, probably a few more home runs than he did last year. Wouldn't be surprised to see Canarella have a few more than he did last year. And then you got guys like, Nolrocky. He's not known to be a power hitter, but he's got a little pop in his bat. And Hinderleiter, who started 2 of the 3 games over the weekend, he hit a home run. He fouled off another one that probably went further than any hit I saw this week. He just yanked it a little bit down the left field line. But so he's got some pop. Blake Wright's got some pop. And Cooper Blauser's got a little bit of pop in that bat. And obviously Jake Gerald does too, and he'll be back pretty soon. He didn't play Saturday or Sunday, but just had a little bit of soreness in his back. One guy I have been raving on all preseason, Devin Parks, the freshman. Not sure we'll see him for a little while. He's dealing with a pulled hamstring. And listening to Eric Bagger's talk last night, first he said a few weeks, then he said 2 weeks, and that leads me to believe it's probably going to be closer to a few weeks than 2 weeks. So, but we'll see. It'll be hard for them to find him spots like it is for Crichton, or it'll be hard for them to find him at bats, same way it is with Crichton and Jaron Purify and Nathan Hall and some of those other guys. So, yes, I know they left a lot of. I know they left a lot of guys on base. I'm not when you score over 30 runs in 3 games, man. I'm not too worried about the run production. Even with leaving the runners on base, they didn't leave them on base Friday. They did some Saturday and yesterday, but it's going to happen from time to time, man. You know, it's baseball. That's what's going to happen. Basketball, though, on the other hand, just another excruciating loss. Another excruciating loss, man. It's hard to watch this team lose in the way they lose sometimes. You know, you get exactly what you want on that final play. Chase takes it to the basket. He's beating his man. I thought the defender down low made a great defensive play, but instead of dishing it off, he keeps it and he doesn't make it. Ian probably has a layup or even a dunk if he dishes that ball off, man. But you know, it is what it is. It's the third 1-point loss team, you know, third 1-point loss in ACC play for this team this year. Just once this team gets into NCAA tournament play, they're going to struggle. They do not have guard play. I'm telling you, y'all can bitch and moan about the coaching all you want to. They do not have the guard play, man. Yeah, Gerard's a great shooter. He is an big-time liability on the defensive end. Chase Hunter's taking a step back on the defensive end. He's played better the last few weeks, last couple of weeks on the offensive side, but he's not the same guy defensively as he was last year. You know, I know Brownell's he's a lightning rod, you know, conversationally inside this fan base. But man, their guard play is not good enough for me, and not in my opinion, to make any kind of run in the tournament. So even when they get there, you're probably looking at an early exit. And despite what happens there, that's going to end up being a quad 2 loss. They're going to get in. They're going to get in unless they just totally bomb the rest of the way. But hard to agree. It's not the coach when the team looks similar year after year with his best talent to date. But is this his most talented team? I'm not sure it is. It's one of his most talented teams. That does, you know, you can say that, but he's not had all these great, highly talented teams in the past. I get it, man. People want to hate on Brownell, and I understand that because, like I talked about 2 weeks ago, I think the expectations for Clemson basketball should be higher than what they are. I can make the argument that 14 years into a coaching tenure, Clemson should have more than 3 NCAA appearances. I don't care what the past says, especially in the portal era. You know, but I've seen too many Brownell coach teams to be very good on the defensive end. He knows how to coach defense. If he knows how to coach anything, he knows how to coach defense. So that's one thing I don't think anybody can knock him for, is knowing how to coach defensively. You know, I think you got some guys on that team, or at least 2 or 3 guys on that team that just aren't very good defensively right now. But I do think expectations, and I have higher expectations for Clemson basketball, man. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. I think Clemson should be in the tournament at least 50% of the time. You tell me Clemson doesn't is a school that can't be one of the what are they taking the tournament now? 68 teams, one of the 68 best teams in the country. At least 2 out of every 4 or 5 years. I ain't buying that. Um, I do think Brownell's got a hard job there, but I'm not buying that they can't be better than what they've been. He's got a good recruiting class coming in. Um, and coming into the season, I was thinking about this yesterday after they lost Saturday night. Coming into the season, I thought this was a tournament team that would probably should be a 5, 6, or 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. And the closer we get, that's about where they are. So and they're right there. They're right there. I've seen a lot of people moaning about not taking the time out there, and I don't know why you would take a time out there. All you do is letting the defense set something up, and you've already called what you want to do in that possession right there when you got screwed on the jump ball. I mean, that game Saturday night was and I'm not saying it was one-sided, but that was one of the most terribly officiated games I've seen this year, and I've seen some bad ones. It was bad. North Carolina State shot 6 free throws over the final couple minutes of that game. Clemson, none. PJ gets mugged on that ball that ends up being a jump ball and, no call. It was bad, man. It was bad. Yeah, I don't know ball, man. I'll just leave it at that. With a few breaks, Clemson should average 20 wins right now. Hey, look, it's not just about breaks, man. Clemson doesn't play well down the stretch sometimes, and as Tickle Tiger can put all that on Brownell all he wants to. Maybe that's part of the problem, but it ain't the whole problem. Players got to execute, man. He can't go out there and play for. He's not turning the ball over there the way Gerard did late in that game. That ain't coaching. I mean, that's execution. It's a lot of things, man. And I am a big believer that teams kind of take on the personality of their head coach, and I have a hard time putting my finger on what the personality of this team is. Early on, they play physical. I give them that. And another thing that doesn't get talked about anything at all is PJ and Ian are both hurt right now. They're both hurt and playing through that. But I don't know what the personality of this team is. It's one that doesn't shoot very well from the perimeter outside of, Gerard. It's one that doesn't guard the perimeter most of the time very well. They have their moments where they do well defensively, and then they have their moments when they don't. And you can't just say they're a team that caves under pressure down the stretch, because they didn't do that in Chapel Hill. They didn't do that. They give up a big lead against Louisville, but they win. So it's not a team that just folds under pressure. I do believe, if they got a couple breaks to go their way, they'd have a couple more wins right now. But I don't think it's all about that. Players got to execute, man. And this team sometimes has problems, especially at home, which is the most confusing part. That's where you're supposed to play your best. This team seems to play better on the road, especially lately. But they don't execute that well down the stretch sometimes. They will miss the tournament. I would gladly eat crow, but it ain't happening. No, they're not going to miss the tournament. About the only way they miss the tournament, man, is if they lose out or lose 6 of 7 down the stretch. I don't see that happening. Should not have been on players. You got to set tone lost game in the first half. See, I don't buy any of this either, man. I think way too many people want to take all the accountability off players now. It's all coaching. Players accept have no accountability and having to go out and execute. And when they don't, it's all coaching. When they do, it's the players get all the accolades. That's how I see things anyway. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. Yeah, they got off to a slow start, but that happens. It's basketball, man. They came back. They took a lead. They had a 12-point lead at one time. I'm not buying the game was lost in the first half. You're up 12 points 6 minutes to go. That's a game you should probably win. How that wasn't a foul on PJ at the end is beyond me. And the jump ball ticker is as stupid a jump ball. Yeah, I don't know how that wasn't a foul either. He got mugged pretty good. And I've never been a fan of the possession error. If there's a jump ball, let them jump. That's the way we played when I was growing up. We didn't have a possession arrow. As a Clemson basketball fan, you have to get used to the scoring droughts. Assume at least one is going to happen there. Yep, you're going to go through a scoring drought, but most teams have scoring droughts. That's something else I've been paying attention to because I kind of harped on that a few weeks ago too about that's one thing I'm always remember about Brownell's tenures is pretty much every game there's going to be this long extended scoring drought. And since I've said that, I've paid attention to scoring droughts from the opponents. They have them too. I think every game since I've said that, the opponents had at least one pretty long scoring drought. So that thing might go two ways more so than I thought it did originally. But that's something. It's too small of a sample size to stay that right now, but that's something I've been watching. That's something I'm going to keep watching the rest of the season. But Clemson definitely has theirs. They definitely have theirs. Jack Clark has been the key to our turnaround in the ACC. Jack Clark's been fantastic on the defensive end, man. Crashes the boards. He's one of the top 2 rebounders on the team when he's in the game, top 2 or 3. Anything you get from him offensively is all icing on the cake, in my opinion. And not only that, he's hurt. He's not healthy. He's not going to be healthy the rest of the season. He's having to play through something too. Same way Ian Shefflin and PJ Hall. Matter of fact, Brownell finally said it the other night that PJ and Ian barely are practicing right now at all. And he said it takes them a little while to get going sometimes. Why did the Air Force? I don't think he was healthy. Don't hold me to that, but I don't think he was healthy. And I also think he probably needed a year to. I think he needed a little bit of bulk too, but I want to say he wasn't fully healthy. I think he has something wrong with his back. Winning close games has been a struggle for Clemson basketball for years now. They've won some close games this year too. They had the 1-point win over UAB. They beat Davidson by 3 points. The Alabama game was close. The South Carolina game was close. That one, I think it ended up being 5. Yeah, 5 points. So it's not like they haven't won some close ones, but they've lost more than they've won. That is very true. And Louisville, I think, didn't Louisville end up come back to tie it after being down big? North Carolina came back to tie it after being down big, and they won those games. But yeah, they're having some problems finishing off some of these games. To me, it's the games at home, man. You know, I know the Memphis one was on the road, but once you got into conference play, they are really, really struggling at home. They play far better on the road, and they do at home, and that's an oddity. That does not. It's supposed to be the other way around. When are they going to start allowing coaches to challenge calls in basketball? Hopefully, never. And that's the one. College basketball, man, fouls are a lot of them are blatantly obvious, but you know they're still subjective. Even if you go back and look at a replay, they're still subjective 99% of the time. Love to get double by in ACC. Now, that's the thing that hurts the most with that loss the other night, man. It doesn't hurt you, you know, from a seeding perspective or your tournament chances or anything like that. They barely dropped in the net, I don't think. But a top 4 seed in the ACC tournament is in play. That is something that the value of having one of those top 4 seeds, man, cannot be overstated. Your chances of having a realistic shot at winning improve dramatically if you can get one of those top 4 seeds and get that double bye. There's a log jam of teams right there in play for that top 4 seed. And if Clemson could have won that game, man, they would have had to step up on most of them. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on basketball tonight. They get back at it Wednesday in Atlanta. That is a game that they need to win because Georgia Tech, that'll be a quad 3 game if I'm not mistaken. I know right now on paper North Carolina State's a quad 3 loss at home, but it'll end up being a quad 2. Georgia Tech, that's a game you need to win. That is a game you need to win. Not only you need to be able to put what happened Saturday night behind you and go out and win that one. What's the record number for pickoff attempts in a game? Oh, I have no idea, man. I know that Xavier was holding those guys. They were making sure Clemson wasn't going to run on them this weekend. And Clemson didn't really try to run on them a couple of times in 3-ball counts, or that was about it. Not that they needed to, but Xavier's got a really good catcher. But yeah, they spent a lot of time throwing over the first. I'll be the first to say I hate the Major League Baseball rule that limits the amount of times you can throw to first, man. That just gives the base runner such a huge advantage. I love the cat and mouse game between a runner and a pitcher. To me, that's part of baseball. I hope they never limit the number of pickoff attempts in college baseball. chemistry has been off. Gerard's a great shooter, but Hemingway, I don't know what that we're supposed to say, but yeah, I don't expect Hemingway to be back. And I at one time thought the chemistry might be a little off too, especially when Gerard was going through his shooting slump. The last few games, I've tried to pay attention to that, like in pregame and stuff, man. And all these guys, they genuinely look like they like each other. So I don't know that I'm buying that as much as I did a couple of weeks ago. I do think that when Gerard's not playing well, he wears it on his sleeve and it affects him on the court, and then it can have an impact on the rest of them. But they do genuinely look like they all get along. I've been paying closer attention to that at the games I've been to the past couple of weeks, because it was something that I thought there might be something to. Watched them have 2 scoring droughts during the game. One player killed them. You mean to tell me no one can defend number 0? Nobody could defend him from Clemson Saturday night. I'm telling you exactly that. They don't have their guards are not very good defenders this year, man. Gerard's never been a very good defender. They always played that zone up there in Syracuse, so you know what you're getting when you bring him down here. He's not gonna be very good defensively, but you can live with that, man. To me, it's Hunter that's taken a step back, which I think he's played better the past few weeks, and he's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't right now. People killed him in that Virginia game because he dished it to an open Clark for a 3 instead of taking the ball to the basket. Even I got on him a little bit, saying he probably dished it a little too early. Now this time he takes it straight to the hoop and doesn't dish it off. He's got Ian right there, and he's still getting killed. So again, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But that's kind of the world we live in these days. But yeah, they had a hard time defending that guy Saturday night. I mean, sometimes a guy gets hot. We've seen it a lot. As a Clemson fan, you've seen that a lot. But no, I don't think Clemson's guards are very good defensively. And no, I don't think there was anybody that was defending him very well Saturday night. Very excited for Clemson baseball. Small sample size, but the lineup looks legit 1 through 9. Last year's team had a drop off after 5-hole hitter, but this team looks dangerous 1 through 9. Yeah, man, this lineup's dangerous. This lineup is dangerous, and Obertop didn't really get much of an opportunity to show what he could do this weekend. They walked him, 7 or 8 times into 3 games. You got a small glimpse of what Mathis is capable of doing. You already know what you have in Will Taylor and Canarella and Blake Wright. I think Cooper Blauser is going to, I think he surprised some folks this weekend, man. That there's not really a weak spot in that lineup when you look at it 1 through 9. And they got some guys on the bench that you could probably plug right in there in some spots, 6, 7, 8, and there'd be no drop off. Absolutely none. A couple of those guys are freshmen. And we saw, I talked about Canuck earlier. We also saw Justin LeGuernick and Drew Titsworth look pretty good in their debuts. But yeah, that 1 to 9, I think this is a dangerous lineup. Just saw that FSU is out of the ACC. They are not out of it as of 7 o'clock tonight, unless that's happened since we've been on there. Are they going to be out of it? Yeah. Yeah, they're going to negotiate the buyout down, and they're going to get out, and that's going to open the door for probably Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, maybe 1 or 2 more to bolt. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens when the ACC, when it's all said and done. Because this thing's happening, and it's happening much quicker than any of us ever thought it was going to. We are headed for a power 2, man. Power 2. And just to be clear, the ACC will not be one of those two. I have high expectations for the pitching, man. I really do. I don't think there's, knowing that nobody's really stretched out yet, I don't think there's a whole lot to be taken away from what we saw this weekend, man. When you listen to Eric Backus talk, he is not worried one bit about the pitching. He is fully confident that it's going to be fine. And if you've listened to his press conferences the past week or so, you heard him say that Austin Gordon's probably 2 weeks behind all the other guys. So I wouldn't worry if he gets lit up tomorrow. If he gets hit hard or gives up a few runs, it'd be interesting to see how long they let him pitch, because him pitching tomorrow, like I said earlier, I fully expect him to end up being a part of the weekend rotation. Not that you're throwing him in a midweek game. When do you make that transition from Tuesday to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and how do you do it? Because if you Thursday, Friday, Saturday, even if you move him to Sunday, that's only 4 days rest. So I wouldn't expect him to go deep tomorrow at all. It looked like Barlow and Tristan Smith were on about 75 pitch counts. Knock didn't quite get that deep, but I imagine he was probably on a similar pitch count. Wouldn't expect Gordon's to be that high, probably substantially lower. But to your question, I like the pitching. I think this is the deepest pitching staff Clemson's had in some time. I mean, when you can add guys like Matt Marshall and Lucas Mostad, two very experienced guys, one a starter, one a reliever that has proven he can pitch on back-to-back. Not just back-to-back, but back-to-back-to-back days. So I would get a few weeks into the season before I started really, at least 3 weeks, get to the South Carolina series. And I think that's when you'll really start to see, what they've got with this pitching staff. Bingo. I think the pitching will get better as the season goes along. Looking forward to seeing Austin Gordon pitch tomorrow. We have lots of pitchers who haven't been on the mound yet. Gordon is one. I was a little surprised he wasn't in the weekend rotation, even knowing he was behind some of the other guys. I was a little surprised Knock was, but I was glad to watch it. I only got to see Knock throw one time in the preseason, and anybody that's listened to me knows I've said a couple of times he was the best pitcher I saw in the preseason. But yeah, you haven't seen Reed Garris. You haven't seen Ethan Darden. You haven't seen Joe Allen. There's a couple other guys you haven't seen yet that I'm probably forgetting. I know Bakich mentioned Ty Olenchuk yesterday, but he's not a guy I'm expecting to see on the mound very often this year. Might see him at the plate with his bat, but yes, sir. I have been up here since Thursday, and I'll go home tomorrow, and I'll be back Friday. Yeah, that's why I'm in a different locale today. My home away from home. And when the wife found out I was going to be back this weekend, she said, "Why don't you just stay there the whole time?" Why are you even coming home? But no, we had a I got to get back to the house. We had my hot water heater busted over the weekend while I was gone, and she had to take care of all of that. And so I'm sure I got a mess to clean up when I get home. Seems like the basketball team gets lazy with the ball a lot. Now this is something that goes back that I can get on board with saying goes back a few years. Clemson gets very lackadaisical with their passing at times, and it tends to lead to turnovers. 100%, absolutely. Props to the new pitcher, Drew Titsworth, for wearing jersey number 00. Yeah, that can't be by accident, man. That has got to be the best name jersey combination in the country this year. Um, Thought Clemson killed it yesterday too with the kid from Xavier. They had a kid named Hayden Christensen. For those that didn't watch or wasn't there, Hayden Christensen, for all you Star Wars fans, played Darth Vader in some of those movies, and he flied out one time yesterday, and they played the Imperial March over the stadium speakers. It was great. It's great for if you're a Star Wars fan. It was awesome. Billy Barlow was great. Yeah, he was pretty dang good. He's probably, he didn't play summer ball since he was hurt last year. He didn't play summer ball. Can't remember if I saw him throw in the fall or not, but he didn't play summer ball, so he was able to get stretched out quicker than some of these other guys. He's been throwing longer than some of these other guys. And before Barlow got hurt last year, he was looking like a guy that was going to take a big jump from what was already a pretty good freshman season there in Monty's last season. I've got big expectations for Barlow this year. It wouldn't shock me if he's the Friday guy throughout, or at least starts out that way, unless something happens and he loses it. I could see him being the Friday guy this year. I think he's going to be that good. I think he's got that kind of stuff. Yeah, that Darth Vader thing yesterday, the Imperial March was awesome. And I don't know how many people actually caught it, realizing what it was when it actually happened. I didn't, it was cool though. And I saw Fred Cunningham say on Twitter he actually mentioned it in the television broadcast, so he caught it. Still be a big windfall for the ACC when four schools leave, maybe 200, 300 million, gives the left behind some breathing room. If you look at it from that perspective, yeah, but how long is that money going to last, and who's going to pay them big money for television rights moving forward? I'm not sure I'm not sure anybody is. That when you start talking about 200 to 300 million between, I don't see more than 5 or 6 teams being at most being plucked off. I mean, from the Big Ten and the SEC, maybe a handful find a home in the Big 12. I I see what you're saying, where it's a big windfall for them, but I don't see where the ACC fits in big time college football moving forward. 5 years down the road, I don't see it. They don't have a move to make. They made their moves, and the Miami and Virginia Tech moves looked like slam dunks at the time. They haven't worked out that way. I didn't think the Boston College move was a terrible one, but it hasn't worked out. Syracuse and Pitt, that never worked out. probably made more so for basketball than anything. But yeah, it's sure they're going to get they're going to get some big fat checks, but who do you have to, distribute? Who's going to be left to distribute them out to? I don't know the answer to that. It's ought to be fun watching it play out because you look at some of these accusations, Florida State. You can just read it. It looks like there were some shady dealings in this thing on the ACC's part and ESPN's part, and we're starting to get a glimpse of why they didn't want anybody looking at that television contract. Man, they looked like there was some shady stuff going on. Nobody knew that. Everybody thought the television deal was locked in through 2036. Turns out it's not. Heck, the schools didn't even know it. I mean, that right there is that's I'm trying to think of the term. I'm not a lawyer. I'm trying to think of the term. I'm trying to think of the legal term, but to me that would be grounds for suit and getting out right there. I'll tell you another thing about this is 2-3 years from now, I know the ACC right now has an automatic qualifier. If you don't win the ACC, I think your chances of getting in the playoff are going to be hard pressed because I think it's going to be I think Big Ten and the SEC are going to get awarded pretty much all of those at-large bids, unless unless Notre Dame gets one year, or they have to give one to a G5. But I think all the rest are pretty much going to go to SEC and Big Ten schools. I think it's going to eventually become the SEC Big Ten Invitational. It's going to resemble something more like the NFL with the AFC and the NFC, and that's you got a Big Ten champ playing a SEC champion for the national championship. At some point, I just don't know what's going to be left for the ACC, which it's sad. It's sad to see what happened to the Pac-12, and we see their commissioner's been fired. I know Jim Phillips catches a lot of grief, man, but that guy took that commissioner's job, man, and he was instantly between a rock and a hard place. I don't know what. There's nothing he can really do. There's nobody he can go out and get to add to the league, really. I mean, there's just the ACC is just a dead man walking. It feels like dead man walking. Just a matter of when, not if. Big 12 and ACC and Pac-2 are the left behinds. Having 300 mil gives them a head start, whatever. Okay, yeah. I can get on board with that. Yeah. Absolutely. I would pay to see Swafford deposed. Yeah, his son being at Raycom and a big wig being at Raycom, that was always something that, I can remember back when the TV deal was signed and, they made, that was a stipulation that Raycom had to get those tier 3 rights or whatever they were. And that was a red flag to a lot of Clemson fans then. And, the schools made no money off of that. None. ESPN made all the money off of that. Each school's got none of it, which is that no kind of deal like that exists in any other television deal that I'm aware of. Not in the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, not in the old Pac-12 TV deal. It's insane. Insane. Hearing more and more Clemson to the Big 12. Yeah, I'll take action on that. I will take action on that. All right, man. That's the end of that. I see the chat's full of spam tonight. Huh. Where are we gonna go? I can't answer that one for you. I'll say this: there is extreme confidence up here that Clemson has a landing spot and not in the Big 12. Listening to other conferences, Clemson doesn't bring market value unless they drop USC. I'm not 100% what you're trying to say here with market value, but of the two teams still out there, Clemson and Florida State are the two they bring the most views by far, and Clemson is the tops. If you go back 7-8 years, Clemson's brought in far more views than Florida State, and that's what this is going to be about. It ain't going to be about locking up television markets no more. It's going to be about eyeballs. Realignment stuff gets on my nerves. I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't spend much time talking about the realignment stuff because it just – I know a lot of people are fascinated and interested in it. I'm not. There's nothing to do but speculate and rehash. There's very, since the lawsuits have been filed, there's very, we could talk about that, but that's more Florida State centric than anything. And, there's just nothing to do but speculate on where they might end up or, how it's going to play out. And at a certain point, you kind of start feeling like a broken record. And that's why I try not to, I don't bring it up too much. And there's been a few times it's been mentioned in this chat and on Monday nights, and I've kind of skipped over it for that very reason. But hearing that ESPN could break the ACC with a drop of a dime, what would that save for FSU spending so much money on this lawsuit? The television contract, there's an option or whatever you want to call it coming up. Heck, I forget what year it is now, but it's coming up soon. And ESPN does not have to renew it. So, yeah, they could – the ACC could absolutely be without a television deal here in a couple of years. All the while, all these schools were told they were locked in through 2036, which is why they signed that grant of rights through 2036, because they were told the television contract ran through 2036. So that's bad faith negotiating right there, in my opinion anyways, or it looks like it on the surface. So – but the ESPN gets the ACC at such a discount as opposed to what it pays for the Big Ten. The SEC. I don't know why they would drop it until some other schools move on, unless the ACC. I don't know why they drop it, man, because they've got to be making bank off of it. Because the payout, what they pay out to the league on a yearly basis is so much less than what they pay out to the SEC. They've got to be making, maybe not bank, but they got to be making pretty good profit off of the ACC's television deal. ESPN always holds the chips. Look what happened to the Pac-12, man. ESPN played a pivotal role in what happened there. People, They claim they don't have all this power and control over college football. They're full of crap. They absolutely are the puppet masters. There's if you go back and read some of the stuff about how the demise of the Pac-12 and Google some stuff about ESPN's role and how that played out, man, and you'll see that they absolutely hold the chips. They own the television contract. They have a option coming up here. What is it, in a year or two? They don't have to renew it. And then you've got a league here with no television deal at all when the schools all thought they were locked in and signed through 2036. So, yeah, ESPN holds the chips. But on another note, ESPN could – here's where it gets interesting. You know, the Big Tens with Fox, SECs with ESPN. FSU, Florida State has a big hard on for ESPN right now after the way they were left out of the playoff. I mean, God knows their fans are still feuding with Kirk Herbstreit on Twitter. But the administration there has a big hard on for ESPN after getting left out of the playoff and some of the stuff they found in this television contract. They don't trust ESPN at all. I don't think Florida State wants anything to do with the SEC or ESPN. They're going to be – I think they're going to be in the Big 12. I'd be shocked if they end up in the SEC the way some of this stuff's played out. But right now, you know, ESPN kind of owns them right now. I think they can have some impact on how this thing plays out. You know, they kind of own their right, so to speak, you know, from a television standpoint. If they can make it much easier for Florida State to move to the SEC as opposed to getting out of their current deal and to join the Big Ten. That's what I'm trying to say. Same thing with Clemson. If they decided they wanted to keep Clemson and didn't want Clemson to end up in the Big Ten, they can make it much easier for Clemson to get out and join the SEC as opposed to getting out and joining the Big Ten, if that makes sense from a financial perspective. That's kind of how I look at it anyways. So, yeah, I think ESPN holds a lot of the chips. And this right here, too. Look at the SEC network and the ACC network, man. The production levels, they're not even in the same atmosphere, man. Not even in the same atmosphere. The ACC network is a joke. It is an absolute joke. Go look in the offseason at some of the things the ACC network shows and compare it to what the SEC network shows. Forget the production value. That's terrible. We all know that. They're not showing the things that would bring in the most eyeballs, man. They're showing crap nobody watches. The SEC's over here showing some of the greatest games played in the past. The ACC network showing some documentary that nobody's going to watch. But, yeah, the production values are night and day. And speaking of that, why you say that, man, golly, big shout out to Clemson's baseball productions, man. When I'm not sure there's a college, a university out there that does a better job at producing baseball games than Clemson does. The camera work, the angles, you know, the way it's presented on television, and it's only streamed usually on the ACC Network Extra. It's not even on cable. Man, they are second to none. Those guys just do a fantastic job. So shout out to them since we're talking about production levels here. Passed Sammy Brown on the way to class last week. He is already at college size, legs like tree trunks. Looks like he's already in his third, fourth year physics. Yes, he is physically ready to roll. I've seen him a few times. Yeah, he's a big boy. And he seems to have had an impact on some fellas out and around campus, man. Been seeing, or it feels like I've been seeing a lot more mullets past few weeks as opposed to what I generally have in the past. And there was a guy at the baseball game Sunday. He had red hair, and he had Sammy Brown's hairdo to a T. So he's already having an impact in one way. I don't know that ESPN can let all the teams out because ESPN does not own. You got to remember the grant of rights and the television contract. Those are two different things. ESPN doesn't own the grant of rights. That's just an agreement between the schools and the league, and it's supposed to be, run simultaneously with the television deal. I don't know that ESPN can just let a team out of the grant of rights. I don't think it works that way. Big Ten plays soccer and baseball, so I would expect that league. The SEC plays baseball too, so but the SEC does not have soccer. That is one thing, and Clemson's got storied soccer program, and Jay says he thinks Big Ten too. If you look at some of the things Clemson's done behind the scenes, some of the sports they've added, it kind of screams Big Ten with adding the women's lacrosse and women's gymnastics and some of the things they're trying to do from an academic standpoint. It kind of screams Big Ten. And if I had a preference, just me personally, I know I'm in the minority on this, but that is where I would prefer they go. That's just a personal thing with me. I'm not sure it's going to play out that way though. Well, we'll see. They fit much better geographically with the SEC. There's more natural rivalries, although, there's a lot to get excited about when you're talking about Clemson, Ohio State, Clemson, Penn State, Clemson. Golly, who else is up there? Clemson, Michigan, and but then you also got to think about Clemson, Iowa, Clemson, Nebraska. Then there's also on the plus side, starting next year, you have USC and Oregon too. But there's pros and cons. But if I had my preference, it'd be the Big Ten. But I don't know, man. I could see it playing out both ways. I would absolutely not write the SEC off as a landing spot at this point. Don't pay attention to any of this crap that's getting spewed by some of these Twitter accounts. I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about. I'm just saying they don't know how this thing's going to play out just yet. Like I know there's one popular Twitter account out there, and I'm not going to name it, that talks a lot about realignment. Says, I think he used to say Clemson to the Big Ten. I think now he's saying Clemson's going to get left out, and it's changed. But then there's another one who talks a lot about realignment. Now he's saying Clemson and Florida State to the SEC, which, again, I said earlier, I don't see Florida State heading to the SEC. But, there's a lot of conflicting stuff out there. And just nobody knows how this stuff's going to play out yet. That's another reason why I don't talk about it a lot, because all you can do is speculate. Because there's nobody up here that talks about that. Not the reporters, can tell you that. This is stuff Clemson hold. This is stuff, let's say Graham Neff. These are the kind of things he holds very close to the vest. It's not getting leaked out unless they want it leaked out, and there is nothing getting leaked out about this stuff. Nothing. How important is this season for Clemson, Florida State, and basically proving their worth to the Power Two? I think their worth's already proven. I think too many times we get caught up in the moment and think the results of a specific season here or a specific season there are going to have this big impact, and I don't think they are. Now, if Clemson comes out and goes 4-8 next year, and you start seeing viewership start to decline, now maybe we had that conversation. But we're talking about one of the biggest brands in college football right now. It's a national brand. It does it draw the eyeballs that Notre Dame does? No, but Clemson does respectable numbers, and again, over the past 7 years, it's been Clemson and Florida State and the SEC. I mean, the ACC, and Clemson's been the more viewed team over the past 7 years. I think Florida State was last season, but if you go back over the last 7 years, 7 or 8, 9 years, or whatever it is, it was Clemson, and by a pretty substantial margin. That's what this is going to be about more than anything, is who draws the eyeballs. And as long as Clemson fans keep tuning in, and they remain a national brand, I think they'll be fine. But if you go out and go 4-8, or 5-6, or 5-7, or whatever, and you start seeing that viewership start to come down, maybe you start to get a little. At least there's a little. Maybe there's a little bit to worry about. Yeah, that's what I was trying to talk about earlier. It just depends on what ESPN could absolutely make it harder on Florida State to move to the Big Ten. Could they block it? I don't think so, but they can make it more difficult in negotiations when it comes to working out a number. The number it's going to take to get out, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to negotiate a buyout. Florida State's going to pay it, and they're going to be on their way, and that'll open the door for everybody else. Won't South Carolina fight tooth and nail to keep us out of the SEC, and Florida do this? Yes, absolutely, 100%. But 5 years ago, this would have absolutely mattered. South Carolina could have kept Clemson out. Florida could have kept Florida State out. I don't know that they can now. Yeah, they will not want Clemson and Florida State in. There's some teams in the SEC, or schools in the SEC, that have a handshake agreement. South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, because you got to have, what is it, I can't remember. You got to have so many votes to push something through. Doesn't have to be unanimous, but you got to have so many. If you got so many voting against it, then it won't pass. And there's 4 or 5 schools there in the SEC that's got a handshake agreement. They'll all vote the same way on those type of deals. That's the way it's been in the past. But the way this thing's headed, because I was told 2 years ago to not look at, because Texas A&M did not want Texas in. Guess what? They got in. But Texas A&M is also not part of that handshake agreement. They don't have all those other schools to go to and say, hey, you're going to vote with me, the way some of these other schools do. So I was told to not look at that as a precedent setter. But since then, I've also been told if it's something Greg Sankey wants to make happen, it'll happen. They will all fall in line and do what he wants. So, yeah, would they fight it? Yeah. Would they prevail and be successful? Not if it's something Greg Sankey really wants to happen. 5 years ago, they probably could have prevented it. But the way this thing's moving now, if he wants it, he'll get it. Would ESPN take the best out of the ACC and merge them with the SEC? You got to remember that ESPN doesn't own these schools. They can't just pick them up and move them over here. Again, if they want Florida State or Clemson or both or whoever in the SEC, they can probably make it to where it's easier to get out of the current deal and move over. But they can't prevent them from, fighting. They can't prevent Florida State from doing what they're doing now and fighting this thing in court and negotiating a buyout and going to the Big Ten. They can't prevent it or stop it. They probably could make it easier on them. Does the SEC have gymnastics? I have no idea. I can look it up right quick. I am far from a gymnastics expert. Clemson had to add some women's sports because of Title IX. Yes, the SEC has gymnastics. So that is not like soccer where they don't have it. Kentucky's got gymnastics. Alabama, Auburn, Missouri, Georgia, LSU. They've all got gymnastics. I don't know if every SEC program does, but a bunch of them do. Still hoping that this Big Ten SEC advisory committee creates a new governing structure soon, like by 2026. I don't know if that's what's going to come out of this advisory committee, but that's where we're headed. There's going to be there's going to be a break. There's going to be a new governing body. There's going to be a whole new sets of rules. We're going to have collective bargaining. We're going to have player unions. We're going to have contracts and all that good stuff. It's going to be just like the NFL. I would love to see Nick Saban as the quote unquote commissioner of college football. That'd be awesome, man. If Clemson went to the Big Ten, they'd have to play an independent schedule in soccer. Kind of think South Carolina back when they were in golly, what was that conference they played basketball in, or they played all their sports in, but football back in the 90s. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but they played an independent football schedule, and a bunch of the other sports was in some conference that I don't even think exists anymore now. So that's what they'd have to do, just play an independent schedule. If Clemson went to the Big Ten. That's if Clemson went to the SEC. I don't think the SEC's got men's soccer. Big Ten does. Yeah, it's the SEC that doesn't do men's soccer. Or do they? There's some standings. Golly, I don't ever remember Clemson and South Carolina playing in men's soccer. But if you join a league in one of your sport and they don't have one of your sports, that's what would happen. You just have to play an independent schedule. Yeah, South Carolina's got a men's soccer team. The Metro League, that's it. That is it. That's the one. The Metro League. South Carolina used to play basketball and I think some of their other sports in the Metro League back in the 90s. And for a long time, and they played an independent football schedule back in the 80s before they joined the SEC. Yeah, heck, looking at this, let's see. I might have been wrong. Somebody told me that the SEC doesn't have men's soccer, but whoever told me that might have been wrong because it looks to me like they do. I know Clemson plays them. But it wouldn't. Okay, only two schools have men's soccer: South Carolina and Kentucky. And South Carolina and Kentucky both. So here's what would happen: South Carolina and Kentucky both play Conference USA schedules in soccer. So that's kind of Clemson would either have to go independent or kind of play another conference schedule with soccer. What happens to the Palmetto Bowl if we go to the Big Ten? I don't have an answer to that, but if they end up in different conferences 10 years from now, I could see that game going away. I could absolutely see it going away. There is not an emphasis placed on rivalries anymore. Ask Texas and Texas A&M. Ask UCLA and Cal. Actually, I said a minute ago. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them. They just don't care about the rivalries the way they used to. Even though Texas A&M going to start playing again. Not Texas going to the SEC, but I could absolutely see it going away. And no, there is no law on the books in South Carolina that says that game has to be played every year. That is a myth. Do not forget, if you have not hit that subscribe button, please do so. Clemson plays basketball Wednesday night at Georgia Tech. Baseball at home tomorrow afternoon. Presbyterian, Austin Gordon gets to start. Stay home this weekend. They got a 3-game weekend series with Kennesaw State. That's a team that's been on the schedule a time or two the past few years. I remember going up there in the mountains of North Carolina and watching Clemson play at Kennesaw State a couple years ago. And as always, we shall be right back here next Monday. If you're not hit that subscribe button, please do so. And yes, there would be a lot of miffed fans if they got rid of the Palmetto Bowl if they got rid of the Clemson South Carolina rivalry game. I hate that term, the Palmetto Bowl. Whoever named that ought to be kicked so hard that their ass goes up into their throat. God, it is the worst name for a rivalry game, I think. But yeah, there would be a lot of upset people. I just think that's where we're headed. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. There are a lot of people think that we're headed that way. And I'm not saying that game's going away. I'm just saying if both of them end up in different conferences, I could see that game going away because I could see a scenario in where those two conferences do not play out of conference games against one another. They play them they play each other in the playoff. Perfect world, they'd keep it, but we live in anything but a perfect world these days. Also, again, want to apologize for the shaky screen tonight. I'm not on the sturdiest of tables, and I don't know if y'all can tell, but I talk with my hands a lot, so they move a lot, which in turn has caused this table to shake a lot. So apologies for that. I should be back in my normal landing spot next Monday night. I will see you guys then at 7 p.m. Appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight, and I will see y'all next week.